This is the host, and this is Unexplained. On March 19, 2019, a woman named Kristen Smart went missing from her college campus in California. Her disappearance was strange. Her car was found abandoned close to campus. There was no sign of a struggle. She just vanished into thin air. This wasn't like Kristen at all. She wouldn't go off without telling anyone where she was going. It wasn't like she disappeared over a guy or something. Before we get into this creepy mystery, now back to the story. As days turned into weeks with no sign of Kristen, her family began to panic. They weren't being kept in the loop by the police. All they got were cryptic notes left behind by their daughter that made absolutely no sense. What could these mean? Was she trying to tell them something? The first note said, "It's been real. Thanks for everything. This didn't make any sense. What was it about?" The second note simply said, "I am." Finally, another one appeared saying, "Don't look for me." By this point, her family was beside themselves. What did these messages mean? Were they leading the cops on a wild goose chase? Did Kristen know something about her own disappearance? Was she trapped somewhere and begging her family to not find her because she was in danger? Was someone holding her captive and forcing her to write these messages? Then, out of nowhere, another note appeared. It said, "All my love, I am with you always." That wasn't like Kristen at all. She wasn't religious. She would never say something like that unless she had fully lost the plot. So what was going on? Was this even Kristen who wrote these messages? You may think this case is wide open and shut. She left all these messages, then it's clear she's still alive, right? But believe it or not, this is a very real case that has many people scratching their heads. In late March, after almost a month since Kristen went missing, her parents received a call from an investigator. He told them he wanted to take a look at some evidence, but it was too graphic to show them. They traveled to meet him and they finally learned the truth. Their daughter had left behind a message, but it wasn't written down or left in a note. It was carved into concrete. While searching for Kristen, officers found a small patch of dirt near the side of a busy road that had been disturbed. They searched the area and found a small hole hidden under some bushes. Inside this hole was a backpack. Inside the backpack was a human torso. Officers used forensic teams to shine a light into the hole. It was too dark to see anything, but when they brought in a drone with a camera attached, they found something so disturbing they immediately regretted doing so. It was Kristen's torso. The only problem was that they still couldn't see her face. The killer, or whoever was responsible for this, had put her body into a concrete mold, leaving only her upper body exposed. All they could see was her feet and legs. Once the drone had finished its grim sweep, officers crawled into the hole to search for other evidence. One officer grabbed Kristen's foot and pulled it out. Her leg came with it. The officer screamed and quickly dropped it. He slipped and fell forward onto the ground. This wasn't supposed to happen. The entire thing was encased in concrete. How was the leg loose? Was someone messing with the police? After further inspection, the officers realized there was a secret compartment in the concrete. When they opened it up, they found a piece of paper inside. On the paper was a bizarre message. It said, "She's gone. You'll never see her again." And signed off with love, Chris. Who was Chris? Is he responsible for the other notes? Did he do this to Kristen? As this case attracted more media attention, more details began to surface. We learned that Kristen was studying to be a teacher, and that she was very excited about her future. She also had a boyfriend. His name was Dante. The two had been dating for a while, and nothing indicated that their relationship was unhealthy or violent. He had been questioned by the police, and he said he hadn't seen her for a few days before she vanished. After she disappeared, he did everything he could to help find her, even appearing on TV to plead for her safe return. Then, something interesting happened. A friend of Kristen's came forward with a story. She told investigators that Kristen had recently broken up with her boyfriend, but she didn't tell anyone. She was afraid of his reaction. According to her friend, she was terrified that Dante would lash out and hurt her. Could this be the reason why Kristen's body was found? Was Dante responsible? To find out if Dante was involved, investigators took a polygraph test. He passed, much to everyone's surprise. This was a huge blow to the case. Everyone expected him to fail, but he didn't. Even though he passed the test, officers still searched his house and impounded his car for further testing. They needed more evidence to charge him. Unfortunately, this case grew colder and colder with each passing day. No one had any new leads. Everything pointed towards Dante, but he had an alibi and passed a lie detector test. Investigators decided to search Kristen's dorm room to see if they could find some answers. They went through everything. There wasn't much of interest until they found something quite suspicious. They found a bloody meat cleaver hidden behind a loose floorboard. At this point, everyone was wondering the same thing. Where was Kristen's head? Was it ever with the rest of her body? Had it been disposed of somewhere else? The police still hadn't found it. They searched the area around where her body was found, but it was no use. Maybe whoever was responsible had taken it home to hide it. But there was one big problem with that theory. There was blood all over the cleaver, and none of it matched Kristen's DNA. In fact, the blood matched the DNA of a person who had already been arrested multiple times for various offenses, including sexual assault. His name was Paul Flores. He knew Kristen personally and had attended the same parties as her, but that was years ago, and he'd moved away. Still, there was enough evidence here to bring him back for questioning. He told officers he hadn't seen Kristen in years, but they weren't convinced. He agreed to take a polygraph test, which he failed. This led officers to his home. They searched everywhere. There were no signs of Kristen or her head. It was almost as if she'd never been there. And that's when things got really weird. Paul offered to take the officers on a hike in the nearby hills, saying that he knew where Kristen's body was. It was a trap. The officers should have seen it coming. They shouldn't have trusted a convicted criminal, but they went anyway. Of course, he never led them to the body, and he was never charged in connection to the disappearance. Another bizarre thing happened shortly after this. Paul suddenly became a person of interest in another case. In 1996, a young woman named Kristen Pacheco vanished from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. This was the last place Paul lived. Some believe that he might have killed both women, but he was never charged, and his whereabouts are currently unknown. Some believe that Paul Flores is guilty, but he's never been charged and he swears he's innocent. There are 3 possible theories surrounding this case. First, Paul acted alone, and he disposed of her body in the remote location. The second theory is that Paul was only an accomplice and helped Dante dispose of the body after he murdered her. And the third theory is that Dante murdered Kristen and hid her body, but Paul had something to do with her disappearance. There is not much evidence to support any of these theories. We don't know for sure how Kristen died or why she was carved up and placed into a concrete mold. There were no witnesses to any of this, and there are no security cameras. The only thing we know is that she's dead. Investigators combed through countless pieces of evidence, but none of it panned out. With no new leads, this case will most likely go cold.